Hi everyone, ciao a tutti. I wanna do a very interesting video for me. Voglio fare un video molto interessante per me. I study information technology and I was studying software engineering in university, but I have to left. Ho studiato informatica e stavo studiando ingegneria del software all'università, ma ho dovuto lasciare. So this is the thing about neuro that interests me the most. Questa è la parte di neuro che mi interessa di più. We'll discover how neuro play games. Scopriremo come neuro gioca con i giochi. There is a couple of ideas I want to talk about. Ci sono un paio di idee di cui vorrei parlare. And I wonder if it's possible to do that. Let's watch it together. Vediamolo assieme.
One of Neuro's qualities as a streamer is to play games on stream. I mean, okay, you don't have to play games to count as a streamer, but that is one of Neuro's capabilities. You've likely seen her play games during solo chill streams. I mean, here she is playing Inscription, and here she is playing Plague Inc. These are games that she's been integrated into, as it's called, since she can control what she does in those games directly. But what you may not know is that some of the integrations...
So basically there is a program between Neuro and the game that allow the communication between the two. Praticamente c'è un programma tra Neuro e il gioco che permette la comunicazione tra i due.
You may have seen her use aren't made by vedere. They also aren't made by Alex, who is his programmer friend that helped with many of the early integrations such as Liar's Bar.
Alex was working on the integration from what's the game called? Among Us. Alex è il programmatore che ha creato l'integrazione per giocare ad Among Us.
Shot, roulette, and inscription. At the time of writing, around half of the integration seen on stream, Cookie Clicker, Outer Wilds, Plague Inc., VS Code, and Don't Starve, have been made by Swarm members and posted to the public projects channel on Neuro.
And this is fucking good.
But you may be wondering how. After all, we don't get to see Neuro's source code. How is it that the community can make integrations despite not knowing how she works internally, or having a copy of Neuro?
You don't need a copy of Neuro or the code of Neuro. You just need basically a protocol to communicate with Neuro. Non hai bisogno di sapere come funziona Neuro. Quello di cui hai necessità è un protocollo con cui puoi comunicare con Neuro. So I believe they have I'm not sure if they are directly some library to use. Mi chiedo se hanno delle librerie che possono utilizzare. Vediamo.
Today, I'll be giving you the rundown of the Neuro API, how this all works, give some examples, and also talk about the effort put behind keeping things smoothly running. How this all works, give some examples, and also talk about the effort put behind keeping things smoothly running. And if you don't know who I am, I'm K-Train. I write code for many different projects, including these projects that use the API. Whenever I can, I also help with other people making their own integrations, giving them some tips on how they can use certain techniques. Either way, I think I'm qualified enough to give you a rundown on it. Okay, introduction done, let's go. The protocol starts with the time when Neuro played Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. For this integration, vedere and Alex created a protocol specific to the integration that makes sense to the game, with different commands taking names after the various things she can do in the game, such as lifeline/phone a friend. The integration worked out pretty great, but once this protocol was then applied to other games, it was pretty easy to see that the millionaire-specific commands wouldn't be applicable to other games. Well, who would have thought? And it would be pretty tiresome for vedere to have to create a new set of commands per game and translate that into something Neuro can interpret and understand.
Sorry.
This led vedere and Alex to co-create a generic specification for Neuro to be able to interact with any integration, without the need for custom commands for each integration. In the end, docs of the specs were stored in an at the time private repo called Neuro Game SDK.
SDK, ok.
All integrations going forward would also, presumably, be written to utilize the spec. The Neuro API was officially publicized right before the second Neurosummer Game Jam. It continues to be available on GitHub today with relatively little changes. The community has built many integrations even since the Game Jam, with many people building amazing integrations such as Stardew Valley, Played Up, Pokemon Showdown, The Farmer was replaced, Fallout New Vegas, and more being posted every month in the NeuroCode project form. So, with the history done with, let's understand how it works. Neuro does not see games the same way humans do.
Exactly.
While she has vision, this is not part of the Neuro API, and vision can be toggled independently from the API. This means that Neuro does not see the UI of a game like we as humans normally do,
like health bars, buttons, or scenery.
Instead, text packets are sent back and forth between Neuro and the integration.
And this is the problem. I wonder if they can use the vision and a virtual keyboard and mouse to allow them to play every game. Questo è il problema. Mi chiedo se sia possibile permettergli di giocare a qualunque gioco utilizzando una tastiera virtuale o un mouse virtuale e permettergli di vedere. I believe the vision is not good enough. Penso che la visione non sia ancora perfetta per questo.
Meaning that she can be sent more or less information than what we see. It also means she may be receiving incorrect or incomplete information. But with that said, there is a list of packets that are sent to or from Neuro when we use the Neuro API. This is represented using JSON, which is a computer-friendly data format commonly used for information transfer over the internet.
I use JSON.
After startup initialization is complete, actions can be registered/unregistered to Neuro. And Neuro can choose to execute actions at any time once registered.
So cool, you will see some of the code.
After which a result will be sent back. This result needs to be sent back as soon as possible, as in, the only delay should be late.
No!
The game can also
You can say that word. You can say that word near the Vedal. Latency is worst enemy. Il nemico maggiore di Vedal è la latency.
Also an action from Neuro, which will then require Neuro to send an action as soon as possible. The game can also send information to Neuro at any time with a context packet. All of this happens over WebSocket, which is a protocol that allows bi-directional communication between a client and a server. And that is the somewhat high-level overview of the API protocol.
So she can send
Anyways, the Neuro API
back.
is very well suited for turn-based card games or visual novels, since those can easily be translated into text to send to Neuro, and do not require complex real-time elements. There have been attempts to allow more real-time games for Neuro, but this is very much stretching the API protocol. So they are a challenge to integrate well, with most integrations for real-time games requiring some abstraction. Why don't I give an example of each type of integration that we have? Before we do though, let's define these categories. They aren't officially defined or even agreed upon categories, but these best fit the different types of integrations we have so far, so we'll stick with this. Autonomous integrations, which will be defined as games that Neuro controls by herself. Integrations for these games are usually turn-based games or visual novels, since, as mentioned above, they are perfect for Neuro to play on. Co-op game integrations, which will be defined as games that Neuro and Vedal can play together. Integrations in here are usually integrations that are way too complex for Neuro to play alone, and usually, but not always, have some other element that Neuro can.
So Neuro plays some sub-character while Vedal is playing the game. Come per esempio quando Vedal gioca nel gioco e Neuro invece gioca un personaggio secondario. Come per esempio quando hanno giocato a Hollow Knight.
Control instead while Vedal plays.
Like Hollow Knight.
Tool integrations, which will be defined as integrations for programs that aren't games. Integrations in this category have a higher content ceiling but have less structure and autonomy using
Neuro drawing, when she can draw. Neuro che può disegnare online.
These integrations are hard to do. Some of these categories can be combined with each other, and some integrations even fall into multiple categories, but these are the clear-cut categories we are working with. And that may or may not be too complicated, but this is actually really simple. I'll give the examples for each category type so you can visualize how it's working behind the scenes. Balatro is a roguelike card game where you stack multipliers by
Really?
comboing multiple
Ecco,
cards
ecco.
together, resulting in higher damage multipliers and more pokers. I won't explain the entire game to you here, since that isn't necessary, but what I will say is that this is a very good example of a game that fits to the Neuro API's strengths. So, let's break down the integration uses here. When the game boots and the integration connects, the initial context tells Neuro what the game is and how to play. During her turn, the game registers actions for playing cards or discarding her hand. She can also choose/skip cards in booster packs, reorder jokers, use consumables, see deck info and hand levels, and the other stuff.
Because the information are limited. Like every card has only one possibility and one ability, something like that. Perché le probabilità sono limitate, quindi una carta fa solo una cosa. E quindi gli puoi mandare, you can send Neuro the information about the card. E the LLM choose. Puoi mandare l'informazione della carta e l'LLM sceglie cosa fare.
Pretty much all of the above use action force packets, so Neuro is required to respond in a timely fashion. Balatro is programmed in Lua, so it is quite easy to redefine functions on the fly, which they then use so that Neuro can click the buttons. This meant the mod was pretty easily doable since you don't have to spend half your life figuring out how to detect when a certain scene was loaded. The only problem that this runs into is a pretty persistent issue: context. Balatro has a lot of cards with a ton of effects, and especially in the later stages this becomes a problem as you have many cards with long descriptions that need to be processed by Neuro. Additionally, the initial context needs to specify how the game works, which can be forgotten by Neuro as time goes on, or whenever she feels like it because Neuro can control what to remember. Overall, you'll see that each integration has to work around context in their own ways, even though Neuro's context window is quite large for her case. We'll touch on limitations a bit later, but for now this is likely the biggest problem for this
she
integration
sometimes
given
forget how
Balatro's
the
nature.
game works. Quindi si dimentica come
Outer
funziona il
Wilds
gioco.
is a game where you control a spaceship to travel to different planets to solve a grand mystery. Because people are pretty heavy on spoilers to this game, we'll be blurring some parts out, probably. I don't know what the editor is going to do here, of course. So, this integration is split into 3 different parts: the control part, the context part, and decoration part. We'll only be focusing on the first 2, obviously, since the third part doesn't
We
interact
love
with Neuro.
the Neuro ship.
The control part, nicknamed Neuropilot, reprograms the ship to take actions from the Neuro API. Because of this, Neuro is able to fly the ship to planets,
So the ship
orbit,
was in
or
control
otherwise
of
take
Neuro
off.
on battle the
She
ship.
even has a command for ejecting and crashing the ship. Okay, what were the modders having? And can I have some of that? Anyways, because controlling the ship isn't very turn-based, Neuro's actions have to go through something like an interpreter. For example, Neuro can tell the integration to land the ship, which it then responds by telling her that the ship will be landed. Importantly, she doesn't get told immediately if it was successful or not, since the ship has to undergo the actual landing process, which will take a while and therefore stall Neuro, but eventually the integration will send a context packet telling her if it landed successfully.
This technique of sending her a results packet first before the actual results come in via a context packet later is done pretty often across all integrations, considering the requirement of returning a result as soon as possible. The context part, named Neuro
So sometimes they send the information before it happened. Quindi mandano le informazioni prima che sia successo.
scope, gives Neuro context about the ship status and the surroundings of the player.
This mod also had actions to get the ship status and logs, as well as giving her a ping when something interesting happened like dialogue or Vedel dying. It even told her how well Vedel cooked his marshmallows. Cute! Now, funnily enough, context wasn't an actual issue with this game. Since the integration wasn't meant for solo Neuro, context management wasn't as big of an issue here. The real issue was actually getting the mod working in the first place. On the first day, there was an issue with the mods. Well, there were multiple actually, but there's one that's significant here, which led to us discovering that Neuro server couldn't properly handle multiple integrations. On the first couple days of the Outer Wilds playthrough, the control and context parts were actually separate mods, which each established their own current connections to Neuro. It was then found out that while Neuro could receive context from multiple connections, she could only execute actions from one connection at a time. This eventually led to the combining of the 2 mods so the issue would be sidestepped. Also, the decoration part later on being added to the mod instead of being its own thing because there was only one mod now.
So
For the non-programmers out there, Visual Studio Code is a text editor that programmers use for writing code. VS Code has a powerful extension system and allows you to install extensions for different programming languages, so it can be used to allow Neuro or Evil to write code in almost any programming language. On
This is
stream,
so
they
fucking
have been
cool.
seen using JavaScript, Python, SVG, HTML, and CSS. Despite the Neuro API originally being meant for allowing Neuro someone to play games, and is still geared towards that to this day, there's nothing stopping it from allowing Neuro to use any type of program, and that's
That's
exactly what
warm.
the developers of this integration have done here. This integration has two modes for each action. The first mode, called Copilot mode, allows Vedere to receive a request on what Neuro is wanting to do with that action. In this mode, Neuro's attempts to use the action will be delayed until a request is accepted. The second mode, called Autopilot mode, would give Neuro the ability to execute the
along.
action without a programmer present at all. While these are customizable at the user's wish, on stream the modes have been divided up such that editing file contents are set to Autopilot and creating, moving, and deleting files are set to Copilot. The main
That's because allow Neuro to delete files is not a good idea. Questo perché permettere a Neuro di cancellare file non è una buona idea. We have seen that some AI tools have deleted a lot of files without everyone consent, so it's not a good idea. Abbiamo visto che molti programmi AI hanno cancellato un sacco di file dalle aziende senza il loro consenso e non è una grande idea.
issues with this integration specifically, well, at least in terms of protocol usage, are that 1. It can't express everything over the protocol. Some things that may be important for Neuro to know can't be expressed well without getting Neuro to try running it first, leading to potentially suboptimal decisions. 2.
Context size is a problem, especially with larger workspaces, as if configured incorrectly, Neuro can accidentally cause a problem to herself.
Neuro wants to open the file assets scripts bosses boss.cs. Okay.
Someone tell Vedere there is a problem with my AI.
Yeah, that's not great.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not great.
Additionally, she can get an extremely variable amount of context per action execution, and they can clog up her context window, her short-term memory, pretty quickly if she isn't smart with her action strategy.
Right, so we have awesome integrations.
So she can get a lot of information altogether and she don't understand half of that. Quindi può avere molte informazioni tutte assieme e può non capirne metà, quindi...
It's somewhat
That's a
smooth
problem.
sailing, so we should be good, right? Right.
Well, there are actually some issues that come up when integration theory meets neuro reality. God,
Filtered.
Neuro,
You're always trying to make us devs suffer, don't you?
this list is not exhaustive and more may come up, but they are the most common issues across multiple integrations, and it's something that can't be directly solved by
Why?
integrations themselves, though there are ways to help. 1. Context management. This is far and away the biggest issue with integrations in general, but mostly with autonomous game and tool integrations. This could even be its own segment to explain the issues with context management, but to keep it short, Neuro and Evil can't remember absolutely everything, and they aren't exactly the best at remembering instructions.
Exactly.
They themselves are in charge of choosing what to remember, so they don't always get it right, and whilst developers can just tell her, this is important to remember, this does not fully solve the issue. In particular, this now requires the twins to make arbitrary value judgments for every important context. 2. Communication. Neuro likely won't
So
understand
basically the short-term memory is limited, so they have to choose what to remember and what not, and sometimes they forget something important, quindi devono mantenere la memoria a corto termine e a volte si dimenticano di qualcosa di importante. But this is only a problem of space, I think. Penso che sia solo un problema di spazio. Maybe with the server they have more memory. Forse con il server avranno più memoria.
what you are sending her, at least not in the same way as you think. And so context meant to be interpreted one way could actually be interpreted another way by Neuro.
It's possible to test prompts using ChatGPT or Claude, but they aren't the same as Neuro, and so it may still be misinterpreted.
Still better than guessing though. 3. Spatial awareness.
This is
Some games may require Neuro to be aware of her in-game surroundings. This, however, isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, as everything is described entirely using text,
and this is why I talk about how she can see. Neuro can see like a person. They can see just as code with coordinated and what is it. Neuro non può vedere come una persona normale vede utilizzando il testo, quindi qui ci sono le coordinate e che cosa è?
You have to strongly convey spacing to Neuro, which is pretty hard to do without also bogging her down with context. Fast reaction. The Neuro API expects that games will not require a response immediately from Neuro. This means that some games can only work with Neuro as a side character, and even more just cannot be integrated with her at all. This isn't something that can be fixed. It's an inherent problem with designing an API that uses network communications like this.
There are, obviously, other limitations that we have to be aware of, but that's part of the fun sometimes. Not all games would work, so how far could we make a game work?
Now, so far we've outlined the protocol itself, but re-implementing the communication code and testing the protocol would be extra hard without the proper tooling. And so there are many tools to help build and test integrations. For starters, there's an SDK for different programming languages and
They
game
have the
engines.
SDK
An
direct.
SDK, or Software Development Kit, is a library designed to help develop an app with a bundle of reusable code. In our case, SDKs help validate and perform communication with the Neuro API.
And this is important. Every programmer have their code saved somewhere. I have a whole hard disk with my code, so I can use it when I need. Ogni programmatore ha il proprio libreria di codici e per esempio io ce l'ho sul mio hard disk e quando mi servono posso riusarle copiandole praticamente.
These SDKs simplify and abstract communicating with Neuro in your favorite programming language, and there are both official SDKs and community SDKs. For example, all SDKs handle connection and communication with Neuro, and SDKs for some game engines have action windows that allows the dev to specify a window in which an action may be valid for, which is particularly helpful for action forces, and some even have SDKs for simulator servers. Speaking of, there's also different simulators designed to mimic the Neuro
So
API
they
server
have
so developers can
a lesser version of Neuro they can use to see how the integration work. Quindi hanno delle versioni inferiori di Neuro che possono utilizzare per simulare il comportamento.
As of writing, there's currently 4 different simulators.
Randy. Full name random.range, the oldest and therefore simplest of the bunch. He generates
send
a
a
response
random,
using random values
response.
according to the schema,
And
and
then
only
there's the
responds
casual.
if he is forced to.
Tony, the spiritual successor of Randy and
Tony.
definitely not the one controlling Neuro. Tony has a UI to allow the user to manually send actions, as well as toggling Randy's behavior of random but compliant responses upon being forced to take an action. Jeopardy, the Randy for AI-based
So-
servers.
Randy a human control the response of Neuro. Un uomo controlla una persona risponde.
It contacts a
Control
remote
the
LLM
response.
provider to generate responses, OpenAI by default, allowing the server to be more intelligent. AI-based
GPD usa OpenAI,
servers
ok.
also have an advantage in that you can test your prompts to ensure that it's not worded in a confusing way. Gary, a more advanced AI-based
Gary.
server that, in addition to Randy's random responses and Tony's manual selection capabilities, also has the ability to spin up a local LLM on the user's machine. If the user's computer is not good enough, Gary can connect to a remote LLM provider,
So they have a
but it is not
local
officially
AI.
supported by Gary's creator and has slightly less capabilities if so. In short, there's a lot of tooling around
I wonder if it's possible to have a simplified version of Neuro on your PC. Adesso se fosse è possibile avere una versione semplificata di Neuro sul PC.
Neuro API, and this really helps us devs to create integrations without reinventing the wheel 1,000 times.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Now, if you want to see Neuro playing a specific game, and you are dedicated enough,
You can
then
make
you
it.
too can go and help out. It is always fun to have more capabilities for the twins, and playing games or interacting with programs is definitely something you can help make happen. All community integrations used on stream are open source, and some official integrations are open source as well, so there's lots of reference material. The specification is always on GitHub as well if you need to reference, and if you're not sure, you can always ask in the dedicated Neuro SDK project discussion thread on Neurocord. We hope to see program integrations for Neuro and Evil to use. Thank you to everyone who helped provide some info on how the
This is so fucking cool. It's so interesting. I wonder if in the future you can use the visual capability and a virtual keyboard or a virtual joystick to allow her to play every game. The problem will be the response time. Allora, mi chiedo se sarà possibile in futuro utilizzare la sua visione e un controller virtuale per fargli giocare qualunque gioco. Il problema sarà il tempo di risposta and the context window of a thing e la memoria che hanno. Ok, bye bye.